series, the DD series. It's being launched by UNDP Nigeria. I'd like to welcome His Excellency, the Governor of Borno State, Professor Babagana Zulum, who's joined by his fellow governor, His Excellency Ahmadu Umaru Fintieri, the Governor of Adamawa State, and His Excellency, the Deputy Governor of Yobe State, Alhaji Idi Barde Gubana. We also have with us three excellent interveners for this discussion, and they're all important partners as the Northeast seeks to recover and build resilience to the effects of this pandemic. They are Ms. Katrina Lang, who is the British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Mr. Ketil Carlson, who is the head of the EU delegation to Nigeria and ECOWAS, and Ms. Zuera Yusufu, the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of the Aliko Dangote Foundation. Now, the objective of this discussion is to drill down on just how COVID-19 is impacting the Northeast states. How are they responding, and how we can work together to support the states in building resilience to this pandemic while accelerating development that will improve the lives of millions of citizens that call the Northeast home. Now, here's the format for the discussion. We'll hear from each of the governors in turn with interventions from our special guests, and then we'll go as quickly as possible to the Q&A segment, where the hundreds of participants that are watching both here on Zoom and on YouTube and elsewhere can join us, and they can get their chance to pose questions to the honored guests. Now, I encourage you to type your questions in Zoom in the Q&A box. It's right there below me there at the bottom in Zoom. And I'll endeavor to ask as many of the questions as I can in the limited time that we've been allotted. I have to be a strict timekeeper, by the way, so I urge all our great speakers to be brief and stick to the allotted times. Please, let's try to avoid reading long written speeches so we can get more time to really talk to one another. Now, first, it gives me great pleasure to invite the convener and I suppose the creator of the Development Dialogue series to give the opening remarks and the official welcome. So over to Mr. Mohamed Yaya. He is the UNDP resident representative for Nigeria. Mo.
Thank you very much, Mark, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, Governor of Adamawa, the Governor of Borno, and the Deputy Governor of Yobe. Welcome to UNDP's Development Dialogue series. The Development Dialogue platform aims to strengthen public engagement on critical development issues to inform policymaking and development priorities. We're here today because we know that humanity is going through unprecedented crisis as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Far from being just a health crisis, COVID-19 has simultaneously activated and intensified multiple crises. In addition to haunting numbers we see in terms of infection and case fatalities, the pandemic has also brought with it an unprecedented human development crisis. For the first time since its introduction in 1990, the Human Development Index is expected to decline globally. This has never happened. Income per capita is projected to shrink in more than 170 countries. As many as 100 million people are will be estimated to be pushed into extreme poverty. Nigeria, as one of the countries with the largest multidimensional poor people, the pandemic is expected to significantly compound what is already a vulnerable socioeconomic conditions, especially in the Northeast and other parts of the country. The immediate future may look bleak. However, our collective history has shown that embedded in episodes of crisis, the opportunities to reassess, rebuild, reemerge, and chart a new bold course towards a more prosperous society exists. Other crises, such as the Spanish flu, has shown that public health system emerged from that the Spanish flu crisis. We tend to forget sometimes. We've also seen that after the Second World War, ushered a global peace and cooperation and multilateralism. We've also seen other crises enable countries like South Korea and Japan and others emerge stronger than before. Nigeria, as you know, will be 60 years old next month. It remains as one of the most blessed countries with a population of doers and some of the most creative human beings on earth. COVID-19 and its devastation offers Nigeria an unparalleled opportunity to realize its promise. We've always talked about that promise. We've always seen it. We've seen it in individuals across this country. This is a time we believe the opportunity for Nigeria to actually achieve that promise is realized. This edition of the Development Dialogue Series seeks to facilitate a conversation on how the northeastern states of Adamawa, Yobe, and Borno are envisioning to build back better, transcending some of the fragilities that the region has seen. You also know that Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe have had their budget in 2020 adjusted downwards of between 20 to 26%, which means fewer resources are available to finance the development agenda of the state. Furthermore, the compounding nature of conflict in the Northeast has slowed the pace of progress and reinforced vulnerabilities to the population, especially those in need of humanitarian assistance. Regardless, and you will hear today with the presence of our governors, the states are investing more in building the foundation for development and investing more in healthy and educated population. You've seen the governments have increased efforts to enhance food security and strengthening peace and security agenda. This roundtable discussion will highlight how these fast-paced changes are setting the ground for lasting development in the region. The presence and the participation of the hundreds who are joining, policymakers, academia, members of the public, and development partners in this conversation, we believe, will hopefully inspire a dialogue around how to navigate such complexities and uncertainties. The United Nations, in partnership with the government of Nigeria through the One UN COVID Basket Fund, has partnered with Aliko Dangote Foundation, APM Mask, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the European Union, the government of Switzerland, the government of Norway, and MacArthur Foundation to support Nigeria to respond to the health and the socioeconomic challenges brought by this pandemic. We appreciate all the support provided by all those partners. I want to personally thank the executive governors of Adamawa, Borno, and the deputy governor of Yobe State for joining us today. I also want to thank Ambassador Ketul Carlson of the European Union, the British High Commissioner Katriona Lang, and Ms. Zuwaira Yusuf, the MD and CEO of Aliko Dangote, for the steadfast support and partnership they provided for the states in the Northeast. I also want to thank the American University of Nigeria, Yola, which today has extended us sign language, you will see, sign language interpretation on this edition of Development Dialogue to ensure that the greater segments of the population participates in this conversation. I thank you all, and I look forward to an engaging participation. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mo. Now we can go to the first session where our speakers will have about 5 minutes to answer the first question. Our first speaker is a leader. He's a former commissioner and he's an engineer. He's a writer. He's an academic. He's also a man who's passionate about finding pathways to peace and progress for the state he loves so deeply. He is Professor Babagana Umara Zulum, the executive governor of Borno State. Your Excellency, welcome. Now, infection rates in the Northeast are relatively low in comparison to the rest of the country, but they're still rising. Can you please tell us what you're doing to keep infection rates down and to track new infections, particularly when it comes to limiting the spread across vulnerable populations? And can you also speak about how you are mitigating the effects on jobs, on livelihoods, particularly for small and micro enterprises? Your Excellency, go ahead. Your Excellency, you might be on mute at the moment, I think. So if you could unmute.
I've unmuted.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
I want to start my video. Okay, thank you very much. Your Excellencies, good afternoon. The Boko Haram insurgency has triggered acute humanitarian and post-displacement crisis, with devastating social and economic impact on the population, further deepening fragility and poverty in the Northeast region. In addition to what we heard from Boko Haram, COVID-19 came up. That has further worsened the existing situation in the Northeast. The government of the Northeast entirely depend on statutory allocation from the federal government, that is revenue from oil. Our internally generated revenue have reduced tremendously because of security challenges in the state, not only in Borno State, but also in the 6 states of the northeastern Nigeria. That has further compounded our own problems. People have completely lost their means of livelihood, resulting from the Boko Haram insurgency. Now coming down to the COVID-19, again, imposition of lockdown. The COVID-19 protocol, among others, had imposed wearing of masks, social distances, ban on movement, and this entails the small and micro enterprises were being locked up. It is very difficult for them to earn their means of livelihood. And most of our population, over 90% of our population, are either fish and farmers or small and micro enterprises. In response to COVID-19, I think the government of Borno State had implemented the COVID-19 protocol of wearing of masks, social distances, ban on movement. Borno State is one of the first states that has established its isolation centers. We have not only one isolation center, we have more than one isolation centers. We also equip our testing center. We have our testing capacity in addition to the teaching hospital that we have. In addition to this one, we also have medication. Furthermore, in response to the response, we had support from the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Support, Northeast Development Commission, and most importantly, the COVID committee headed by Alhaji Dangote had provided huge food supply to the internally displaced persons. Then coming down to recovery, that is something which is very important. I think what we did is that Borno State last 1 month had provided 1 billion naira grant in partnership with Bank of Industry to our medium and small enterprises. And this has gone a long way in providing capital seeds to our teaming entrepreneurs in the state. Apart from this also, we have distributed food and non-food items to almost all the local government areas in the state. We have supplemented the airports of the Northeast Development Commission, the airports of NEMA, the airports of other non-governmental organizations and governmental organizations that are working in the state. And by and large, let me also acknowledge the support of the international partners that are working in Borno State, UNDP, the EU, UK, German and others in supporting the government of Borno State. We also receive a lot of support the window of stabilization facility with a view to stabilizing the northeastern state. So far so good. I think these have been some of what we did. But some of the challenges that we are having now also has to look into the issue of decongestion. We have huge number of IDPs in our states. Over 1 million people are still internally displaced persons. So one of our greatest challenges is that of decongesting the IDP camps. Hitherto, we have thousands of people living within a hectare of land. With the advent of COVID-19 and other related diseases, I think there is a need for us to immediately look into the issue of decongesting our IDP camps. That is something that we need. Again, the issue of wash. Sanitation is very important. We need to also look critically into the issue of wash. But most importantly, there's a need for us to create jobs so that people will start their means of livelihood. We need to decongest them by returning people and resettling their IDPs into their own hometowns in a safe and dignified manner so that they can go and start their businesses. But by and large, I think this is what I... Thank you very much for calling this very important meeting, and we are ever ready to listen to you and to support you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor Zulum. It's always wonderful to hear your thoughts. You touched on a lot of issues there, which we will come back to shortly. If I could ask for you to switch off your microphone now, and that goes for every speaker once you're completed. And also, Governor Zulum, maybe your technical people can work on your video, because we didn't see you and we would love to see your face. So
I've seen you now.
Okay, thank you. Now I turn to the governor of your neighboring state to the south, Governor Fintieri of Adamawa State. Your Excellency, welcome. Now, you've devoted much of your career to serving the people of Adamawa State. You were a member of the Adamawa State House of Assembly, and then you rose to House Speaker before your election and elevation to the role of governor, which you hold now. Now, more than anyone, you can see the strain on the healthcare systems, livelihoods, and the jobs, and I suppose the society at large in Adamawa State that this pandemic has brought with it. Social protection has been affected. We've seen increased cases of sexual and gender-based violence. So briefly tell us, what are you doing to tackle COVID-19 in Adamawa? And if you could touch particularly on some of the initiatives you put in place to help society deal with the pandemic, such as the Adamawa Peace and Conflict Resolution Commission. Governor, you have the floor. I think your mic might be muted. Governor Fintieri, I think your mic might be muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Your Excellencies. In response to your question, particularly the first one, I think Adamawa State has established a tentative, well-equipped infectious disease center as against a makeshift isolation center, which is generally found in most states of the Federation, which be of minimal use post-pandemic. Two, we have prioritized building capacity of existing health workers at all levels for respective roles in surveillance, sample testing, case management, etc., and also leverage on existing structures, particularly the state media houses, ward developments, communities, local community leaders, community-based organization for risk communication activities. There was the need for a resilient health system, which was imperative in this case. This can be achieved also with adequate number of motivated health workers with capacity for surveillance, testing, case management, availability of requisite infrastructure for infection prevention and control. We also established a functional public health laboratories with capacity for modular PCR testing and availability of essential utilities, water and sustainable electricity. This also was made possible with the availability of requisite equipment, consumables, supplied drugs and vaccines in all health facilities, as well as effective transport mechanism for referral across the state. Based on this also, we had developed corporate organization and philanthropic individuals partnership for them to assist in most cases, they donated their facilities, houses, hotels, for us to use as an alternative isolation centers. But that is not to say that the COVID-19 pandemic did not affected us greatly on the economy of the state, particularly that we leverage more on the allocation from the Federation. But we have intensified our efforts since coming into government by enhancing more on revenue generation, IGR, and that has helped us greatly. We have also been able to achieve most of this with the acknowledgement of our development partners, the NEDC, Northeast Development Commission, and Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs. You also asked about our if I may get you right, our Peace Conflict Resolution Commission.
Yes, that's right.
That was necessary because before the coming of this administration and long time when I was in the State Assembly, as rightly mentioned, we have had a lot of conflicts in different dimensions, particularly harder farmers, intertribal, but with minimal consideration to religious conflict. We decided to have this commission out of experience that I've gathered from the State Assembly, so that the Conflict Resolution Commission is intended to identify immediately remote and immediate causes of conflict among communities by providing solution to conflict mechanism that is being proactive in reconciling communities in dispute and in an open and transparent manner. The essence of the commission also was to ensure that there is a peace building among various communities in the state, considering our diversities with more than 87 different ethnic groups, I think, which is one of the largest in the Northeast, through education, preaching, sensitization for peaceful coexistence. We have also, through this commission, have in their mandate to have a social integration among the various people in the state, in seeing that people with different background, culture, see themselves as one community or an entity in Adamawa State. And this will be structured around the board of the commission at the state level, which will develop, coordinate all the materials required for peace, and gradually down to the local government level, we'll have a peace and conflict resolution committee with membership from responsible community leaders, civil society organizations, religious leaders, market and women association, and a lot of NGOs, and at the same will be replicated at the world level. And I think with all these, our peace resolution that we've been searching for in the state will be available for us to flourish and develop as a state and one people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor Fintieri. I'm looking at the Q&A section, and I can see that we've already got several questions, some of which are directed in your direction, but I'll save them for now and quickly go on to your brother, Alhaji Idi Barde Gubana. Now, Alhaji Gubana wears many hats. The current deputy governor of Yobe State leads the efforts to improve education, healthcare, agriculture. He leads the efforts to improve education, healthcare, agriculture, and youth development in his state. He's also the chairperson of the Yobe State COVID-19 Prevention and Control Commission. Your Excellency, you're most welcome to this dialogue. A simple question, first of all, what have you done in your state? I understand you've launched a variety of initiatives, including health insurance, primary healthcare facilities, and many others. How do you think a healthy community contributes to the development of a healthy Yobe state beyond this pandemic? You have the floor, sir.
Good afternoon once again. Thank you for organizing.
You may have two connections. That often happens if two of your devices are connected. So you might have to switch off one, but please go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, it's gone now. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we appreciate this meeting to go down memory on the activities of COVID-19, other primary health care activities in the states. So really appreciate Yobe State as a rural state has not hold its arms in developing the primary health care system. This government of Honorable Mala Buni, the chairman of Wujuba, who is also a national chairman of our party now, that's why he was absent. I'm here to represent him. It's a government of continuity, which he took over from our leader, His Excellency Senator Ibrahim Gaidam. And at the time of Ibrahim Gaidam, he was able to establish a very vibrant and strong healthcare facility in Yobe State, which is popularly known as Yobe State Teaching Hospital. And that has brought support to Yobians in terms of maintaining our health status, having a very free health system to enable us undergo our humanly behaviors in all aspects of human life. So those things are necessary for a quality of healthcare services to all our populations, wherever they live and work, is centered to the development of every nation. As rightly I said earlier, health is wealth, and a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. It is in view of this that the current administration prioritized healthcare services and invested heavily on it. Better health is critical to human happiness, well-being, and stability. With the current economic challenges in the country caused by the pandemic, compounded pandemic, we recognize the need to ensure that health facilities, especially at the primary health care level, continue to provide critical preventive and curative services. While also working on the other determinants of health, better health generality contributes immensely to the economic progress as health populations will live longer. We are more productive and save more. A healthy community continually creates and improves the environment and expands resources such that the prerequisites for health are provided and all citizens of the community move towards the broad definition of health. The incidency over the last 11 years has impacted on the mental health of the population, and as such, we work hard to prevent panicking and population or create a situation of anxiety, which can further compound on their already fragile mental health status. This is particularly important for the younger ones, the aged, and the women. That is why the current governor, on assumption of office, declared that each and every ward of the state we have 178 wards must have a functional, well-equipped primary health care so that people can easily access good health services in their respective areas without traveling far to the state capitals. And so far, we have completed over 60 of such primary states on 60 wards, and 50 already have been awarded. Works are in progress now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alhaji Gubana. That is great to hear. 60 and 60 wards. We'll hear more about that in a moment. But let's bring in the first of our special guests, or special interveners now. It's great to have Miss Catriona Lang, who is the British High Commissioner to Nigeria, with us. She brings with us a wealth of experience since she came to Nigeria in 2018 and took up this post. She's worked in many countries in many capacities: Zimbabwe, Afghanistan, Sudan, to name a few. Your Excellency, you're very welcome. Now, we've heard from the state leaders on how they're tackling this pandemic, and they were blunt and straightforward. This is a crisis of unprecedented magnitude, compounded by the particular security situation that already existed before COVID-19 came to our shores. Now, briefly, what's your perspective on all what that you're hearing from a key development partner's perspective? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and greetings to everybody. And I'm so glad to see the sign language. It's a great innovation. So just a few brief reflections. I mean, I think starting with Mo's opening remarks, this is obviously the world's greatest crisis. We're all facing it in the UK. I woke up this morning to see that the COVID numbers are going up. You know, we're all struggling with how we balance the absolutely overriding imperative to get our economies functioning again, whilst keeping people safe. The reality is we have to live with this virus at least probably for another year and a half, because even under the best case scenario with a vaccine, by the time it's rolled out and so on, it's going to be quite some time. The opportunity, as Mo said, is about building back better. I think the watchword for me, which I think came through in all the remarks from the governors, is about resilience. And they're particularly important from the Northeast states, resilience at every level for individuals, for families, for communities, for the governors. Because as we respond to this crisis, we have to deal with the ongoing deep structural crisis and possibly prepare for future crises. So it's all about building capacity, and that means strong institutions, and that means strong partnerships. And I think the meeting today is a really good opportunity to discuss. Just picking up very briefly a few of the remarks. I think the Governor of Borno talked about, you know, over 90% of enterprises, a small and medium scale enterprise. So I think, you know, absolute imperative has to be for us, and I very much welcome his work he's doing with the Bank of Industry, to try and ensure that people can run businesses, because in every crisis there are opportunities for business, and I think that has to be a really high priority for us. The work around the horrible gender-based violence that's unfortunately increased during this crisis, and that's happened in the UK as well, personal priority for me. People are traumatized, going to the remarks from the Governor of Deputy Governor of Yome. I'm glad you mentioned mental health. These are people already deeply traumatized, who are now being doubly impacted by COVID itself, but also the second order impacts, including sexual violence. So I think a focus not just on health, but on mental health is a really, really good suggestion. And then finally, just briefly, the Peace Building Commission. You know, ultimately, the solution out of this horrible, deep crisis, the underlying crisis of insecurity, is about peace and reconciliation, building a political settlement. So I think working from the grassroots up and building on the good work of these peace commissions is going to be critically important. Sorry, if I could just add one final thing. I want to talk about education. Obviously, it's been essential to have children out of school for now, for safety reasons. But it is, I think, a really high priority to try and get kids back into school, whilst we try and continue to innovate around perhaps different ways of doing education. Perhaps not all children can go back to school at all times. So there may be some need for remote education as well. So I think we'll have to think really creatively, but we cannot afford a whole generation of children to lose their education. Let me leave it at that for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, High Commissioner to Nigeria, British High Commissioner to Nigeria. Thank you. We'll come back to you later on in this program with more interventions. Now, when COVID-19 broke out earlier this year across the globe, UNDP Nigeria acted fast. It created a basket fund, a unique mechanism to pool funds together for a more effective response. One of the first private sector organizations to answer the call to contribute to the fund was the Aliko Dangote Foundation, with a generous, I believe, $3.8 million. Now, we're pleased to have with us Ms. Zuera Yusufu, who is the Managing Director and CEO of the Aliko Dangote Foundation. Ms. Yusufu, your brief thoughts on what you've heard, what we can do together to tackle the impact of this pandemic.
Thank you very much, Mark. First of all, good afternoon to everybody, Your Excellencies, my colleagues on the call, and all protocols duly observed. Thank you very much for having me today. I think we at the Aliko Dangote Foundation have been working with the Northeast states for a while. So we already know, we've worked for a long time, actually having our midterm review with them in the next couple of days with Ed Hedge and with Bill Gates to go over how far we've been, how far things have been going over the past few months. So we've been working with these states, and I am particularly impressed with how states that were already dealing with issues that other states didn't have to deal with, i.e. the insurgency, had on top of that the coronavirus situation to deal with. So all of us had to deal with coronavirus, but they had it extra. And the lockdown made it even more difficult. So of course we had to, figure out how to effectively support. So while we, as the foundation, had already responded to the initial request of the NCDC to respond to the incident action plan, when the first COVID case had been diagnosed in Nigeria, it immediately became obvious that we needed to do more. And that's how CACOVID was born, which is really the coalition of the private sector against COVID-19. How CACOVID came about was through Alhaji Aliko and Herbert Wigwe of Access Bank coming together and saying, look, instead of the two of us just trying to do something, or we're doing something differently, why don't we get the whole private sector together? And so they did so. Central bank got involved. The governor has been the chairperson since. And in a remarkable, unexpected, I would almost say, feat, we were able as a group to raise immediately 20 billion naira. Like in the immediate first cut, we already had 20 billion naira. People really contributed. And it wasn't just the big organizations that we all know, the banks and the flour mills of Nigeria, the BUAs, et cetera, the Fund for Oil, et cetera. But we had all kinds of individuals, companies coming together. So what it reflected for me is that, wait, the private sector in Nigeria really has a role to play, and we can do so. It was very easy for us to quickly sign the deal with the UN to get the testing supplies in, because we already have a relationship with the UN as Aliko Dangote Foundation. So we were able to sign this on behalf of CACOVID to get testing into the country because we didn't have enough. The second thing we wanted to really do was work on isolation centers. So we were able to provide equipment to all 36 states plus FCT, isolation center equipment. We built some, but mostly we donated equipment to set up isolation centers. This was beds and consumables, mobile x-ray machines, PCR lab components, et cetera, that we were able to provide and really dispatch to all 36 states. In addition to that, then the palliatives problem, which became apparent the minute that the lockdown happened, also galvanized the CACOVID leadership to say, look, why don't we try to reach the 5% most vulnerable people in Nigeria, which comes out to 10 million people, 1.7 million households. Let's break them out fairly according to how many people we have in Nigeria, and let's get palliatives for those teams, rice and pasta, sugar, salt, maize, semo, etc. Let's get that for these 10 million people. So that's how we ended up providing, for instance, Borno for 50,000 families, 50,472 households, Adamawa, 36,000 households, Yobe, almost 30,000 households. And we really delivered these various components to the states. And now we're in the middle of doing distribution. Some states obviously they're not all at the same level of how far they've gone with the distribution, but it's really been impressive to see how quickly, the idea of putting a committee together to make sure that, the food was really getting down to the more needy people has come. And so this has been a really clear, to me, example of how the public and the private sector can come together how the states can work very effectively with the private sector, and how the private sector is really willing to support and help. And so, you know, we just happen to be in the middle of managing the COVID because, you know, we have the philanthropic side, which is what I run, but we also have a business side. And so it was just easier for us to do this. But I think there's a real recognition that the private sector in Nigeria has a big role to play and that they're willing to do so. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll now move on to the third and final intervener after we've heard from Ms. Yusufu from the Aliko Dangote Foundation and their generous contribution. The European Union was the first to support the Basket Fund with a very substantial donation of $50 million that allowed UNDP Nigeria and its partners to act very swiftly to secure the badly needed PPE equipment to fight this pandemic. Ambassador Ketil Carlson is standing by. He's the head of the EU delegation to Nigeria and ECOWAS. You're very welcome to this discussion. I wanted to ask you, first of all, your reaction to what you've heard so far, and also a specific question. Why did you step up so fast to support the Basket Fund?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Excellencies and dear colleagues and friends. You know, it's an amazing initiative, and it's good to see yet another example of the vitamin injection that came to UNDP with the arrival of Mo some months ago. This is really great to have this kind of encounters and, you know, the opportunity to have in-depth discussion on what is really needed on the ground. And I'll get back to your question on the 50 million, not only dollars, but euros, which is of course even better. Just look at the rates a little bit later on. But first of all, let me genuinely commend the governors for their work and for their introduction here as well. I can only begin to imagine what it must have been like when you sat somewhere in your states and had news of the arrival of the coronavirus to Nigeria in your states, because of course you are already challenged with very, very daunting challenges indeed, and the last thing that you needed was something to complicate things even further. And certainly my heart sank in the beginning of all of this, thinking of the many thousands of people in IDP camps, and you know the clear risk that they face on top of the already very, very difficult circumstances. So you have taken very bold moves. It takes courage and resolve to be a politician these days, maybe more than ever before. And I think you have done that and really grabbed the bull by the horns, which is great. But at the same time, to a certain extent, the pandemic is sort of an amplifier, isn't it? It's like a development liquid, like we used to use for developing photographies, and it's showing more clearly, you know, what are the underlying and already existing challenges that we are grappling with. And as we see the impact only beginning to emerge in our countries, I'm certain that unfortunately the hardest hit in the long term, it may not be the hardest hit in terms of total numbers of positive tests in the short term, but the hardest hit in the long term are the poorer people, and certainly the 3 states that we are discussing today is a case in point here. So we need to think really hard about what's next and what can be done already now in order to create livelihood opportunities, and of course also to address some of the underlying social service shortcomings that we see in the northeast of Nigeria and other places as well. And I think one of the key conclusions that we need to draw here is that we need to build on genuinely state-led policies and visions. And this is very easily said, but it's much more difficult to do in practice. And there needs to be a bit of mea culpa here, I think, from the international community as well. You know, making sure that we do not do things in parallel, that we genuinely build, you know, on the leadership and the policies of those that know things on the ground the best. And we are really trying to do that with the EU has set aside 350 million euros or so for the general work on resilience in the Northeast. We do this in close collaboration with all the governors that are here today and your teams, of course. But still the calibration between the support that we provide and the provision of social services that you need to provide in the short to the medium term, I think we can improve even further there. So then when we are refurbishing the General Hospital in Monguno, making sure that, of course, staff is availed then from the government to make sure that that is put into the best possible use. And that builds to the basket fund. And it was wonderful to hear the Dangote Foundation already describing so well the kind of immediate rapid response that could be done here. And I think it has never happened in the world probably before that such a fund has been established in such a swift time. And I looked at the tables today, you know, this equipment is already in all 36 states, including the 3 states in northeastern Nigeria. And that is great, and it gives that, you know, rapid support and solidarity that is needed at a point in time, of course, where, you know, all the European countries are very preoccupied as well with our own battles and challenges. I think this is really reassuring to see that solidarity coming through when it's most needed. But again, the immediate relief needs to be accompanied with long-term planning, where we think really hard about what are the structures that we have in place, are they efficient enough to support the medium to long-term policies in terms of supporting livelihood and the provision of basic social services. And I know I've been speaking too long, but I want to build on what has already been said by others, including Catriona, on the importance of gender-based violence here. You know, this heinous pandemic within the pandemic that we have seen. And we have been engaging on that very, very actively as well, including in the Northeast. You may have seen, some of you, the town hall meeting hosted where President Buhari spoke out as well. And I think we need to commend the governors and the Governor Forum for declaring a state of emergency here. But of course, a lot more can be done. And you know, engaging in a political dialogue here, maybe appealing to the governors here to make sure not only to domesticate the Violence Against People Act and the Child Rights Act in your state, but even be more ambitious in terms of securing a swift and strong implementation here. And a lot can be done. Making use of the National Register for Sexual Offenders, making sure that you have shelters, making sure that you have as well the so-called SACs, the Sexual Assault Referral Centers that we see in other parts of the country, and that provide immediate relief and opportunities to create a way forward for some of the most vulnerable victims of sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria. I've been speaking for too long. Thank you very much for this inspiring format, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the debate. Back to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Ketil Carlson, head of the EU delegation to Nigeria and ECOWAS. Now, I'm going to turn, as I promised, to the Q&A and take a question from the Q&A. We've got almost 40 questions just in the Zoom alone. And Your Excellencies, the governors, I'm going to take this first question, and it's about people-centered development approach. It comes from Alaji Friday, who's joining us from Cape Town in South Africa, the University of Western Cape, to be precise. And the question from this development expert is, he wants to know, I will sincerely appreciate if the honorable governors and deputy governor from the Northeast could give us details on the level of people participation in this and what participatory approaches they have put in place to achieve development. How do the people participate? And if they do participate, how and what level of participation is there? I think I'll go to Governor Fintieri for this one, if you want to take it, the governor of Adamawa State. How are the people participating in Adamawa State, Governor?
Yes, in Adamawa State, I'm a product of the people, and all our approaches has been people-centered. there's no development, there's no decision, there's no approach, that we have never consulted with our people before taking on them, considering that we are coming from the background of the damages from the Boko Haram, on one hand, particularly in the northern part of the country, of the state, and other farmers kidnapping, Sheila Boys activities on one hand, in the central and the southern part of the state. Looking at this holistically, these are problems that needs people's approach. And since our inception, in all the decisions that has been taken either as a policy or program by this government, we've always consulted with our people, get their mind, get their position on each of the issue that government have been taking and implementing to the best interest of the state. Even the budget of 2020 that has been sliced to about 28%. It is still ongoing by the Planning Commission in consulting with the people as what best and how best they think we should approach the budget in terms of development, both human and capital. And I think by and large, we've been consulting with our people, and things are working fine, and the tension in the state is reducing drastically. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now move on to Professor Zulum, the governor of Borno State, which is the epicenter of the insurgency. Your Excellency, this is a question that actually was touched on. The point was touched on by Her Excellency, the High Commissioner, the UK High Commissioner to Nigeria, about education, skills acquisition, entrepreneurship. There are many questions in the Q&A, but I'll just focus on one of them from Foluke Michael. She says, youth development through inclusive education, skills acquisition, and entrepreneurship is more important than ever now to reimagine, to strengthen, and promote economic development to address the COVID-19 crisis in Borno. What plans do you have to address this, Governor?
Thank you very much. I think it's right because we need to address the root causes of the insurgency, which are not limited to endemic poverty, pervasive illiteracy, high unemployment rate, social inequality, poor economic infrastructure, environmental degradation, drug abuse, among others. And therefore, this administration, since we came in, education and technical and vocational education are two main agenda of our administration in Borno State. We have 10 agenda. Number 1 agenda is security. Number 2 is food security. Number 3 is providing means of livelihood. And number 4 is education. What we did within the last 1 year is to construct more classes. Because right now, we have deficiency in number of classrooms. Our classes were so over-congested. We have teeming population growth of youths in the state that have no access to Western education. So what we did is that within the last 1 year, we constructed nothing fewer than additional 15 secondary and primary schools. We constructed more classrooms, and also we established 3 main vocational training centers. This time around, in my second year, we are now focusing on providing teachers, 3 teaching centers, 2 teaching centers, 1 training center. 3 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 teaching centers, 1 training center. just a few days ago, I've given approval for the recruitment of about 1,000 teachers. Because what matters is not only the building. You can build more classrooms, but the classrooms will never be functional without good teachers. And now we have directed for recruitment of more teachers. Let me also appreciate the effort of EU, as well as other development partners here that provided more classrooms to us. And they are now, we have built them back better. But the main thing is that we have to look into the issue of sustainability. That means for them to hand over such classroom to us, we must recruit teachers. So what we did is that we have established 3 vocational training centers now. We are now partnering with other organizations like German with a view to equipping these centers. The next thing is that we have existing 9 states. We were also able to equip them. The last but not the least is the issue of youth empowerment. We have more number of youths that are out of school children. What are we doing so? We have already profiled them. And if you can understand, it's just yesterday that I met with CDN team, where we wanted to provide job opportunities to over 200,000 youths, especially in the areas of agriculture, under the Anchor Borrower Scheme, fish farming, irrigated agriculture. We want to support them, train them, and provide them with some certain starter parts. I think this question is very important. What matters is not only providing immediate humanitarian support to our IDPs who are living in the IDP camp as well as in the host communities, but the most important thing is that how can we engage them so that they can be on their own. I think this is something that we need, and the only solution to this is to provide an educational system that can create jobs. We have started so far so good, and I think we are also discussing with UNDP and other organizations with a view to filling in the gaps so that they can support us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I want to ask the Deputy Governor of Yobe State a question about education. I think this is at the center. This is arguably, possibly one of the most important questions. So I'm going to ask him a question. I'm looking at the Q&A, and I think I'm going to combine 2 questions. Israel Enyi points out that today is World Literacy Day. He's the World Literacy Ambassador for Nigeria. And so he's asking, as important as literacy is in actualizing the Nigerian dream and a Northeast that is safe and prosperous for all, are we ready for schools reopening in, say, Yobe? And what's needed to get kids educated either way? There's also a question from Professor Khalifa Dikwa, who wants to know, are they ready as they come together back to schools for social distancing? And also, how are teachers going to be paid as a result of this lockdown? A lot of questions, but just if you could just wade in on some of your thoughts, because I know as Deputy Governor, education is one of your passions and one of your portfolios. So please go ahead, Deputy Governor.
Your Excellencies, first of all, I will give an examples of myself. As a Deputy Governor now, I am from a rural area, so the benefit of education has been shown on me. Because without me being educated, I could not have the opportunity of becoming a Deputy Governor in Yobe State. So education is very vital. Education is for development. No country can develop without education. So in the inception of our governor, His Excellency Romala Buni, he declared education as vital for our people knowing the background of the low level of education in our state. Because the past 11 years we had under the Boko Haram, our education sector has been devastated strongly because most schools are being closed, schools are being banned, children were in shocks, parents were in disarray. So we are now regaining from the shocks of the insurgency. So we must double our efforts, not other states that have been so peaceful, to ensure that our education status has been improved. That's why he said he declared the state of emergency on education. A committee was set by prominent educationists, and they have submitted reports, and the reports are being implemented gradually, one after the other. So as I'm talking to you now, we have renovated so many schools across the 3 central zones, and equally because of this COVID-19 pandemic, Yobe State, we are ready to open our school because so far, almost 70 days, we have not recorded a single case of COVID-19. After we have been having our molecular tests, we have been testing people on daily basis, 40, 50, 30, 60, every day. But God is very mercy has saved the Yobe State from the COVID-19 spread. So in this case, I think Yobe, we are ready for opening our school because our children are just going around the streets, which has so problems for the future generations. So we are ready, and if you can see how the SS3, the JSS3, and the primary school 6 who are now conducting examinations, we have taken all adequate measures to ensure that the schools are in safe situation, free of any infection from either COVID-19 or any other disease. So we are ready, our low background education, we are ready to take all necessary measures to ensure that our people resume to schools and continue their education, inshallah.
Thank you very much, Deputy Governor. Now we'll go into session 2. And in session 2, we'd like to focus on questions around agriculture and food security as the Northeast fights this pandemic while navigating a very complex security and economic situation. Governor Zulum of Borno State, food production was already strained even before the pandemic hit in Borno State. What's your approach to ensuring agriculture thrives, considering it's a mainstay for a large segment of your population? 3 minutes, please. Your Excellency, I think you might be on mute.
Food security is one of our major challenges that is facing the state. In addition to what the government of Borno State and other partners are supporting in terms of humanitarian support, I think the most important thing that we need to do is how can we create access to people so that they can go to their own farmlands. You can recall, since my assumption of office, that has been my job. What I did first and foremost is to engage with the Nigerian Civil and Security Defense and establish what we call agro rangers. Agro rangers, we recruited nothing less than 600 able-bodied youths, plus about 300 civilian civil defense corps. We formed a formidable team that will provide access to the IDPs to the agricultural lands. And that is why we were able to increase areas under cultivation by about 300% from 2019 to 2020. I'm telling you, this year around only, this year, government of Borno State has cultivated about 15,000 hectares of land, in addition to what the farmers have done. More so, we also provide fertilizers. We launched our fertilizer sales last 2 months or 3 months. We launched with about 30,000 metric tons. We provided seeds, chemicals, and what have you been. This is in terms of rain-fed agriculture and irrigated agriculture. In terms of livestock also, we did a lot by providing some vaccines and others. But I think most importantly, what we did is, first of all, we created opportunities to the IDPs for them to have access to their farmlands. Last year, the government of Borno State cultivated about 10,000 hectares of land. This year, we increased to about 15,000 hectares of land. But most importantly, I've written a letter to the theater commander with a view to supporting the Nigerian military and other paramilitaries to provide security for the farmers to go to their farmlands. This has yielded a positive result. I think, for example, now between Mafa to Jukwa is about 45 kilometers. Government and the people were able to cultivate up to 30 kilometers along this line. We can see a sharp change from the last 2 years in terms of food production. Gradually, we can become food sufficient. And I think this is something very important that we did. We have also engaged in tree planting campaign. This is also very important with the view to mitigating the adverse of climate action. So I think so far so good. Security is number one challenge for us to go to our farmlands, but government has been doing a lot in ensuring provision of security so that farmers can go to their farmlands. The so-called restriction, hitherto restrictions to farmlands by the Nigerian military has now been reduced tremendously. As far as I'm concerned, there is no any local government area in Borno State now that people are having a very limited access to their farmlands. We have increased the access by about 40%. So far, so good. I think this is what we have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Zulum. Governor Fintieri of Adamawa State, Your Excellency, and this is not an issue just for Northeast, this is across Nigeria. Too many young people feel that farming is just not attractive. It's just not attractive to a young person. In fact, the average age of a farmer in Nigeria is like 55 to 60 years old. Yeah, how can we change that? How can universities and development partners and other stakeholders work in a symbiotic way to boost employment and improve security and get people back to the land, sir?
Thank you very much. I think really across the entire country, getting the youth back to farming is a major problem. And it's not just farming for consumption, but farming for sustainability and agro-business. I think the institutions, particularly of higher learning in the country, should engage more in attitudinal change for the youths and develop more curriculum to make graduates take various fields of agriculture seriously as a business by diversifying the multifaceted nature of agriculture, particularly in crop production, livestock, fisheries, etc., along the value chain and agribusiness, like I have mentioned. The universities and tertiary institutions in general can be made to tailor programs to produce youth that are field and self-development oriented, to my mind. Government can also come in to support and improve productivity and entrepreneurial focus among our youths by encouraging and nurturing in skill acquisitions among our graduates so that they can take to productions massively, in particular in cereals, legumes, vegetables, livestock, poultry, production, processing, and marketing. This can also be done, I think, through providing agricultural inputs and implements rather than raw cash to these youths directly. In Adamawa, for instance, we've been working with Sasakawa Global 2000 to empower most of our youths in agro-business to make them sustainable and self-reliant. Also, we've been collaborating in all the agro-business support of the Central Bank of Nigeria to get our youths into agri-business, and they're responding positively well. We have also gone into land clearance to provide more of these farms to our youths so that it can be encouraging to them, for them to stop looking for white-collar jobs or government-based employment opportunities, and see agri as a major business that can be sustained and make them more reliant in the society. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to go to the Deputy Governor of Yobe State, but before I do that, I just want to get a quick, whilst it's still fresh in their minds, I want to get a quick reaction from our interveners, an intervention from our interveners. I'll go to Ambassador Ketil Carlson of the EU first. So what's your reaction to that? Agriculture, of course, is something that you're a big partner, the EU, across Africa, and in particular, in this case, in Nigeria. Sir.
Yes, no, thank you very much. I think what is coming very clearly out here is the importance of having a comprehensive and integrated approach. Right? There's no one silver bullet solution to food security in the Northeast, as the governor said, so rightly put it, without finding a solution to security more widely. So we need an integrated approach where there are political tracks, a political dialogue, a way out towards a peaceful solution in the Northeast, of course, combined as well with security provision on the ground, dealing with the insurgency there, whilst at the same time connecting this very carefully with what are the possibilities of livelihood opportunities. And there, of course, agriculture plays an absolutely vital role. And I think more in general, there need to be two tracks in Nigeria that are combined at the same time. One is creating more industrialized, efficient agriculture. But if we only solely look at that, then we overlook the massive small-scale farming that is taking place in Nigeria. And looking at Latin America in the 80s and the 90s, where I worked as well, this was a mistake that was made, and there was a lost generation, if not more lost generations. So I think we need to have a two-tier approach, where on one hand we make agriculture more efficient, but at the same time make sure to connect the small-scale farmers to the markets through value chains. And this is easier said than done. And then merely just to echo again what the governor of Borno State said about the importance of connecting the provision of classrooms and hospital clinic facilities with the availabilities of teachers and health workers, etc. And this is exactly the philosophy as well, of course, of the stabilization initiative of the UNDP that is being supported by the EU and many others as well. You know, making sure that we are all part of a wider coherent approach where we support policies led by the governors in the states where we are engaging. Back to you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I've had the privilege over the years of every now and again working with one of the most inspirational individuals that you're likely ever to meet in Africa or beyond, Aliko Dangote. And when you talk about the value of value chains, Ambassador, no one knows this better than he does. In fact, Dangote Enterprises wouldn't exist without value chains and agriculture. So I'm going to turn to Zuwaira Yusufu, the MD of the Aliko Dangote Foundation, for her reaction on this. Zuwaira.
So thank you very much. I was really, I agree 100% on what Governor Zulum was talking about. A couple of years ago, we set up to help in the reconstruction of the Northeast, and we wanted to build permanent housing for some of the IDPs. And at the time, His Excellency was the commissioner for RRR at the time. And he made sure that we didn't just do the rebuilding, meaning, okay, now they have a house, but so what? But that we would also have a means of livelihood. That's one of his favorite expressions that he always says, and it's true. So he made sure that all the 200 houses that we built had a plot of land that the people living in could grow some things to eat. They had a fishing projects, poultry, and some small scale animal husbandry. And that to me is a mini model of how he's thinking about the state as a whole. There's no way that people can live depending on handouts, and there's no way that anybody can provide enough money, enough support, enough capital to keep people just barely surviving. The idea is, what is the investment that we need to make so that people are able to take up their lives and keep going? And I think that that is the key to solving this idea of people being able to live. If we can make sure that people have access to means of livelihood and an ability to generate income for themselves so they can live, half of the battle is won. One of the things that we had been discussing with Adhaji, and some of this has been, of course, disrupted by both the pandemic and insecurity, was how do we set up some kind of, whether it's a factory that makes something that uses labor, but that produces something that people need, so that people are gainfully engaged and employed in doing something that's being produced where they are. So that idea is still on the table. I think part of the challenge is, how do we actually make it happen, given the challenges that we have? With the education piece, we have a school. We've already signed the MOU with His Excellency about how we would take over the school and educate about 5,000 girls. Again, that's another project that's been halted or put on hold given the pandemic. But the pandemic will be with us, like the High Commissioner said, for maybe another year or so, but we need to start thinking about post-pandemic. We're not going to be in this pandemic forever. And the investments around education, agriculture, I mean, Borno is, there's fishing there, which I didn't even know. They can grow most things that we consume in Nigeria, in Borno. So as long as we can get the insecurity issue under control and kind of get over the hump of COVID, I think this is something where, again, partnership with the private sector is literally a no-brainer, and a lot of possibilities for investing in Borno, Adamawa, Yobe are they're very easily doable things with the right support of the leaders of the state, in this case, the governors, who are all very willing to do this. So this is something that we have been, waiting to get over, like I said, the hump of COVID, to get back to work in those states.
Yes, and I think the narrative needs to be made a little bit clearer about the northeast of Nigeria. That if you look back in the history of Nigeria, history of the northeast, it was a powerhouse, a trading powerhouse, and it was an agricultural center. People are, I always see the northeast as a place that we need to find a way to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit, which is there. But these
yes, Mark, the first irrigation projects, if I remember correctly, in Nigeria were done there. Yes. So the idea of, big scale agriculture, farming and doing what we need to do to feed people, this is the real narrative of the Northeast, and we definitely need to get back to that.
Thank you. I'll move on to the final intervener, just for a quick reaction to the first comments you heard from the governors of Adamawa and Borno State. Catriona Lang, UK High Commissioner to Nigeria, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad we're covering this topic. I think it's probably the single most important issue for Nigeria to get right, if it's not just to survive COVID, but to actually get back on a sustainable growth path. As you say, Nigeria was a very productive agricultural center, trading center. Oil came along, and then oil becomes 90% of your revenue, 60% of your exports. And, in the classic, curse of oil, the agricultural sector has collapsed and it has to be rebuilt. It's still a third of GDP, but it's very, very low productivity. So really welcome the governor's commitment and the increase in hectareage under agriculture. And there's obviously going to have to be some land clearances to do that. But I guess I just wanted to put a few kind of cautious words down, because deforestation is also causing 2/3 of your climate emissions in Nigeria. So it's very glad to hear about tree planting, but better not to cut down trees at all. And if you're going to plant trees, they have to be the right kind of trees. So using this period to be really careful and cautious about what kind of agriculture you want, which is sustainable, which does create jobs, as Kettle alluded to, that helps you with your food security, but also critically is sustainable and doesn't destroy your very fragile ecosystems. And as demography becomes even bigger challenge, as we know it's going to be, you find a way to do agriculture in a way that meets those different objectives and doesn't create a bigger problem for you down the line. Final point just on youth. Why doesn't youth go into agriculture? Frankly, because it doesn't make much money. So it is ultimately about two things, I think: making it productive, but secondly, harnessing the great entrepreneurial tech spirit of young Nigerians and bringing in a more technological solution. All those very smart apps that people are developing, weather mapping and so on, really can inspire and encourage the youth to get into agriculture, not necessarily in growing stuff, but in enabling it. Over, thank you.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. We're going to talk about technology in the final leg of this very, very interesting interaction. He's been sitting patiently, and I do appreciate it, Deputy Governor Gubana. My question is actually about deforestation and desertification, if I'm saying that properly. Once fertile land becoming arid and dry, a big problem, not just in Yobe, but across the Northeast. It's an increasing problem. What can be done about it from a Yobe state perspective?
First of all, the issue of degradation is a very hazardous danger in the discussion we had on agriculture, because it has affected production in the Northeast greatly, more especially in Borno and Yobe State, because Adama is literally a savanna area which has a high concentration of rainfall in the rain season. But northern part of Borno and Yobe has been drastically affected by desertification. So we as government, we are doing as much as we can to see that we can curtail the effect of this encroachment to enable our lands to be productive. In this regard, His Excellency, the Deputy Governor of Yobe State, this year has launched a tree planting campaign of 3 million assorted seedlings, which he has launched about 1 month back. And we have engaged community leaders, royal highnesses, village heads, NGOs, schools, both primary schools, secondary schools, and tertiary institutions. We have placed a token change as a gift for whoever becomes best in nurturing the trees. And we have equally put some stipends for individuals, housewives who are able to raise their trees for 1 year. We have commenced that for the past 3 years, and we are continuing with that effort to ensure that our people have inculcated the culture of raising trees to avoid the fast encroachment by desertification. So we are now making concerted efforts with the Great Green Wall and the environment and the lecture basin to see that areas like Yusufari, Yunusari, Gaidam, Guru, Machina, we plant more trees to curtail the desert encroachment. We have some species which are drought resistant, and we are making the culture of planting those trees and nurturing them. So the state government has done a lot to ensure that we control the effect of these desertifications to enable our farmers have a fertile land for their crop growth. In our 2021 budget, we have directed that 5 million seedlings will be raised, and then for consecutive 3 years, so that we will ensure that the vegetation has been recovered and the desert encroachment has been recovered. Siltations, our rivers, we are taking measures to curtail them. So inshallah, with the help of the United Nations, USAID, and other NGOs which are there, like NISAF, which has played a better role, and then the government have withdrew it is only the state government partnering. We are soliciting for the United Nations or any or EU to come and sustain the NISAF, so that if there was enough funding for the NISAF, I think it has a very good record of fighting this depression in the northern part of your state. So we are urging the United Nations or any other developmental partners that may come in to resuscitate the NISAF so that it will fight against the desertification in your state.
Thank you very much, Deputy Governor. I want to turn back to your brother in Borno State, the Governor of Borno State, and stay on this topic of climate change, of tree deforestation and wood, but in this case, firewood. You know, many families, Your Excellency, and homes in your state are still energy deficient. They rely very heavily on firewood and charcoal as their main source of energy, and that places a huge burden on the ability for your environment to rejuvenate and reduce the effects of climate change. My question to you is, how do you navigate this situation? And it's further complicated, of course, by the limitations of access to the insecurity. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mark. I think you are right. This is one of our greatest challenges. Because you have rightly pointed out that even before the advent of the insurgency, our people are dependent on firewoods and charcoals. We have been experiencing desertification. And then when we took over the mantle of leadership, I have now sent a bill to the State House of Assembly, first of all, to review our forest laws. This is very important because there is a lot of impunity in the system. People normally used to fell trees, live trees. Whatever we did, if there is no adequate laws on ground to control the desertification, we are not going anywhere. So what I'm doing now, what I did now is that I've sent review for the law establishing control of the desertification in the state. This is very important. Secondly, there's need for us to shift our ground. We must embrace modern technology, gas cooking. Gas is even now more cheaper than firewood. Gas is more cheaper than charcoal. So what we did now is that within the last 2 months, the state government was able to buy nothing fewer than about 7,000 portable gas cookers. We want to deploy such gas cookers to some of the affected local government areas, especially like Kalabelgeran, where we have serious difficulties in getting firewoods. And most importantly, what matters is not only the provision of the gas cookers, campaign, advocacies to the entire people of the Borno State on the need to inculcate the use of clean and affordable energy, because this is one of the sustainable development goals, which is provision of clean energy. We have seen erratic supply of rainfall within the last 10 years. Rainfall is normally less than 200 millimeters, especially in the northern part of Borno State. That means crops can hardly do without irrigation, simply because of the desertification. I'm not running away from the fact this is one of our major constraints. So what we did now in order to reverse the situation, among others, is first of all, establish a very sustainable and strong laws that will deny the population from cutting our trees. But also we need to understand one thing. While we are trying to deny them access to the firewoods and charcoal, there's need for the government of Borno State to also look into the possibility of providing such alternatives to them. And that is why we now wanted to invest on LPG we now wanted to invest on gas cooking, making some certain advocacies on the disadvantages of using the firewood. Again, in terms of agriculture, we want to embark on crop rotation, mixed cropping, as well as tree cropping. Each and every farmer must have some tree crops in his farmlands. This will also mitigate the adverse effect of climate change. We have started, I've given just go ahead for the Borno State government to plant 1 million trees. But what we want is that how can we continue this process of tree planting in a sustainable manner? We are also linking up with the Great Green Wall with the University of Maiduguri Center for Desertification to see how possible best we can foster this problem. One other issue that we are having now is that most of the trees that we are planting, we normally have problems of animals eating these trees. So we are trying to look for some certain species that are anti-animals. Animals cannot eat them. Otherwise, we are still in problem. Again, we are also trying to look for some certain species that are drought resistant. Jatrupas and others are also very important. So I think this is one of our greatest problems. We need the UN agencies, although we receive some certain support from EU, from UNDP, and also from other organizations, through some of the development partners, trying to provide trees and others with a view to mitigating the climate action. This is something that, again, we are appealing to the UN system, to the EU, UK, and USAID, that it's better for us to come together again to review the entire situation, especially the desertification along the shores of the Lake Chad. Initially, the Lake Chad has a potential of about 25,000 square kilometers. Now the Lake Chad has shrunk to about 3,000 to 5,000 square kilometers. Because there is need for us to suppress evapotranspiration, the silting of our lakes. So I think that is where I wanted to stop. But most importantly, about the Boko Haram insurgency.
Yes.
The insurgents have also destroyed our flora and fauna species. This is something that is very difficult. We need to reverse it again. We need to look into the issue of rejuvenating some of our fauna species that are not in existence now as a result of the Boko Haram insurgency. So thank you very much for this very important advice. We still need the support of the international community because the rate of desertification in northeastern Nigeria is very alarming. Unless if something is being done, this will also raise the potentials of the region to become panic. There's need for us to do something so that we can get rid of this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. I was looking at the Q&A as you were speaking, and there is actually, I would advise all the speakers and even the interveners to cast an eye over it, because there's even some questions. I see one for Ketil there. Umar Garba points out that northern Adamawa is equally semi-arid. The little savanna found around the Benue Valley needs serious protection, says Umar Garba. The world should lend the necessary support in this direction. Now let's move on to the final segment, and that is a segment that looks at one second. Let me give me a second. It starts. I think I'll start with a Nigerian saying, and you might have heard this one before. It goes: "A person cannot sit down alone to plan for prosperity. You need the right partners to find the right pathways to progress." I'll start with a question on partnership and collaboration to Governor Fintieri of Adamawa State. Now, the private sector, Governor, is vital to creating employment and growing the economy. How is Adamawa State creating partnerships with the private sector that could spur development?
Sorry, Your Excellencies. with the private investors, we have the enabling environment that will help sustain their investment in Adamawa State. Recently, we've gone into that with Boa Group International. We've allocated our limestone and gypsum license to the group for them to build a factory of cement in one of our local government in the southern part of the state, specifically Guyuk local government. And we are developing that and we are going very far. It is very promising with the Boa Group, and they are looking forward to setting up a cement industry in Adamawa, which will not just be producing cement, but providing employment opportunities for our youth, both direct and indirect. And we're in top discussions with other private organizations to come and set up a tomato paste industry, fish industry in some of our dams, and the rest of them. So I think that is why we're able to put down this Peace Resolution Commission, so that the environment will be safe, will be better, will be promising for any investors that comes to the state to invest, because no investor will want to come to a conflict-ridden environment. And the government have seen that, and we've gone through legislature in the State Assembly to get this commission, and we're looking forward to getting the technical support of the EU, like they've been providing before for us in areas of peace, for us to take off and develop this peace commission effectively, so that anybody that wants to come and invest either in the agro business, either in the cement, solid minerals, like we have them in abundance in the state, they are welcome. And in the northern part of the state, like the other question raised, yes, is a semi-arid area, and like two of my neighbors, Borno and Yobe, last year we planted 1 million trees. This year we are planting about 2 million trees so that we can sustain deforestation, and a very high committee to stop the cut down of trees is in place in Adamawa, and we have made it easy for those that are building LPG plant in the state to get the approval faster and easier. Like the governor of Borno State, people are discovering now that using gas to cook is more cheaper than using firewoods and charcoal. And I think Adamawa at the moment is very safe, and the government is encouraging with a lot of enabling laws for investors to come and invest in the state, and is safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Fintieri. Alhaji Gubana, Deputy Governor of Yobe State, Your Excellency, the next Northeast Governors Forum, I think, is coming up in November in Governor Fintieri's state, Adamawa State. Now, the last one highlighted the importance of solidarity between Northeast governments and the federal government, and that includes, of course, the Northeast Development Commission, the NEDC. What, in your view, could be a master plan that supports Northeast development and fast tracks shared development priorities, not individual, but shared priorities, and also progresses towards the sustainable development goals? Sir.
Okay, Mr. Mike. You know, first of all, we appreciate Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief and the legislature at the federal level for giving an opportunity for enactment of the Northeast Development Commission, bearing in mind how the Boko Haram has devastated the Northeast. So the commission was established to complement the sufferings of the people of Yobe State by the governors who are eagerly hopeful to ensure that they revitalize the whole system, which has been in decades, which were caused by incidents. So our last meeting, which I was opportunity to attend as directed by my governor, Honorable Malabuni, the governor discussed with the MD and his team on how best we will ensure the benefits of the Northeast Development Commission as it was established. And this one could not be achieved without proper planning on what's supposed to be done for execution in the Northeast. We have so many challenges ranging from education, agriculture, primary health care, youth receptiveness, and numerous to mention. So we have to sit down and make a plan of what to be done in bits. That is assuming in 2021 budget, in collaboration with the state governments, we give them what we require to be done to sustain what the people need in our respective states, so that they can put it in their own budget to ensure those things have been done. We discussed a lot of things in Bonu with them and other areas which will need interventions, and we have agreed that before the next meeting in Adamawa in November 2020, the state governments we have made a technical committee to sit down and bring up a well-planned design mode of the development from the respective state, which will come together and therefore to the Northeast Development Commission based on the statutory allocations that are being allocated to fund their activities in the Northeast Development Commission. And then this one, is, as people have been saying, could not deviate the relationship between the Northeast governors and the other, and the entire body of the Nigerian Governors Forum in totality, because we have problems which is quarantined to be in the Northeast. So we want to move and solve other solutions collectively. Then that will not get any gap between the Northeast and then federal government or other sister states in the country. So inshallah, by good grace, by a year or two, the people will really see how beneficial the Northeast Commission, in partner with the governors, will develop the Northeast development in all aspects of human endeavors. Thank you, Mr. Mark.
Thank you very much. I will now turn to your partners. We're talking about partnerships, so let's bring in some of the partners, some of the interveners. I will start with Ketil Carlson of the EU, and it's the final conversation, but it's one that is you're right at the center of, because what would we do without partners like you? Please, I'll give you the floor to kind of discuss a way forward. What I want you to do is, if you can, pull out your crystal ball and gaze and give us a glimpse of what could be the future, please.
Well, that's not a small question, but thank you for believing in my capacity to answer that. And considering that this will be my final remarks as well, again, thank you for such a rich debate here. I think the backdrop of this conversation is, of course, the COVID-19 crisis that we discussed initially, and how this has exacerbated some of the already existing structural challenges in the Northeast, and to a certain extent made the stakes even higher. And the solidarity certainly has been there from the international community. In the case of the EU, as we mentioned, we provided 50 million euros very swiftly, and made sure that a significant proportion of that would be allocated for the 3 states in question. Of course, on top of that, we also had our humanitarian assistance that was reinforced with some 17.5 million additional euros directed to WASH, as was mentioned by one of the governors as well, health facilities, additional provision of food security and beyond. So on this somber background, if you wish, on a very, very complex mix of challenges exacerbated by the current COVID-19 crisis, I think there are some positive takeaways here. And one of them is seeing multilateralism in practice through the establishment of the One UN Basket Fund, and the way we increasingly engaged based on the policy and leadership of the governors themselves, because this is the only way that we can fundamentally make sure that everything is done in a coherent manner, that it's streamlined, that we don't operate in silos, that by the end of the day we all work towards a common goal here. And as we discuss partnerships, we often forget to define what that means. And it's easier said than done. I think we need to move well beyond a collaboration focused on the international community as development partners. And this does not mean that we will not continue being development partners or to give priority to development in the Northeast. On the contrary, I think if anything, we will give more priority to that and to Africa in general, and Nigeria and the northeast of Nigeria in particular. But we must understand that our partnership goes well beyond that. It has to do with issues that you have mentioned in terms of international collaboration on securing investments in private sector, engaging private sector companies like we see so eloquently represented here by the Dangote Foundation today, which I think is brilliant because it's these public-private partnerships that will help bridging the gap. We can never solve the issues with development cooperation alone. Even if we multiplied it by 100 times, it would still not be enough. So we need to be smarter about having an integrated, comprehensive approach where we deal with the political issues, the security issues, and developmental economic issues in combination. And doing that, of course, by following the guidance and the reflections on those that really know what the challenges are on the ground, namely the governors and our Nigerian partners. So I think this is the spirit when you look at future collaboration between the European Union and Africa in general. This is what we see reflected, as a potential outcome, having this message reinforced, as well as when we go to the EU-AU summit that will come later in the year. But it only matters if we can really convert that into genuine action on the ground in places like the 3 states that we are dealing with today. So again, thank you very much, and that will be the last remark from me today. And thanks for all the excellent questions. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Ketel. I'll turn to the High Commissioner to the UK. Just very briefly, I noticed a question coming in from Olumide Idowu, who asks, what's the contribution of the international organizations and their stakeholders in building resilience for post-COVID-19? I think we've come full circle in terms of our questions. I'll give you the floor now for a few minutes just to say your final thoughts on everything you've heard and maybe what your own part will be going forward.
Well, thank you very much. Brilliant conversation. I want to say a few words on partnerships because I think in a way it helps bring it all together. We've talked obviously about security, and I think none of this is going to work without a very strong, productive civilian military dialogue and partnership to provide that enabling security as a foundation for peace, for prosperity. So, and to be honest, we know the relationship is difficult and a little bit fractious. So I would really urge us all to try and enter into it in the spirit of collaboration, cooperation. If our military colleagues were on the line, I would be saying the same. Another key partnership is with civil society. They put their lives on the line to deliver for us. Many have lost their lives. We just celebrated International Humanitarian Day. So that partnership also really needs to work. I think the partnership between the 3 of you is absolutely critical and is working really well. But I think we have you 3 also in the wider Lake Chad Basin context. So the wider partnership we're developing through the stabilization facility, and I'm not sure when the next meeting is of the 3 of you with your partners in Niger, Cameroon and Chad. But this is a transboundary set of challenges and set of opportunities. So that partnership really needs to matter. I think one area where we really can be creative, and I was so pleased we focused on it, is around sustainable agriculture. And the Governor of Borno specifically requested support on, what kind of trees and so on. We're absolutely here to help on that. We have a visit, actually, a virtual visit from somebody called Mark Balihi, who is the Prince of Wales's environmental advisor, who's coming here, actually at the request of your president, we all know, is a great environmentalist, and there was a huge meeting of minds between Prince of Wales and the president. So I think we're really in the market for some innovative work to think about how the Northeast can go back to where it was, not where it was, I should say, actually a different kind of future, but equally productive, a different kind of agriculture that's fit for purpose for the future. But let's really ensure that when we invest in agriculture, our collective resources, it's the right kind of agriculture, that each state isn't in competition for limited resources, but you complement each other, that you work together. So partnership with our universities, our research institutions, and I think they're there across Europe, and the universe and UNDP can help us facilitate that. And then finally, I think the partnership you have with the federal government. You do need a very clear contract. The Northeast has been probably a little bit too neglected. We need to ensure that it's clear going forward what you're bringing, what they're bringing, and how you hold each other to account through a mutual accountability framework. And we're happy to be part of that. But as Kettle said, it's you who have to lead it, and the most important relationship with your government, and then we'll come in behind you to support you. All from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let's see. Now, finally, I'll move to Zuhaira Yusufu. We're talking your game, partnerships, collaboration. You are the queen of collaboration and partnerships. Nobody knows it better than you do. I'll give you 2 minutes, please, or 3 minutes, just to say your final thoughts.
So my concluding thought is that everything related to partnership has to start with the person that we're trying to help. And I'm putting the help in between quotes to say that I've worked on both sides of development, and I think we've had this conversation specifically with His Excellency Governor Zulum before. The key is for the states to be driving the conversation around what they need. I think once we have a clear sense of where the states want to go, it's not that difficult to organize the partnership around that. I think the challenges really come when we on the donor side aren't necessarily coordinated. So everybody's coming with their own agenda from somewhere else that they're trying to fit into the partner that they're supposed to encourage and support. And I think it's a difficult thing to say, and it's an uncomfortable reality. But the truth is, the states have to be the ones driving the conversation around what the states need. The conversation cannot be driven by anybody coming in to support them, whether it's a local partner, international partner. It needs to be driven by the state. And I'm saying specifically the state because we're today talking with 3 state governors. The other really important part of partnership that I wanted to bring up is there is a untapped market, is the only word I can think of willingness. There's an untapped amount of support that we have that we don't necessarily think of in terms of who can support us, who can work with us, who can partner, who can invest. I really like the example of the BUA cement investment. I think if I remember correctly, it was in Yobe. First, these are the kinds of things that we need to be doing more of. We have, in Nigeria, we happen to be one of the, I'm going to call it lucky, fortunate countries to have a vibrant private sector that has manufacturing companies in it. We need to work together between the public sector, the federal administration, of course, but specifically the states, to make sure that these investments that can be mobilized by the Nigerian private sector can actually be put to bear and to deliver the results that we're looking for. There's nothing that Our Excellency said today that can't actually be done. By the time you put together the private sector, the private philanthropies, the development partners like the EU and the UK and DFID and USAID and the World Bank, and we bring everybody together, there's no reason why we can't be doing all these things that we aspire to. But the key is to come together in an agenda that is driven by the states. And that's really my final comment.
Thank you very much, Zuhaira. We just have a few minutes now to round up, and I'm going to hand over to our host and the convener, Mo Yahya, the resident representative for UNDP Nigeria, to take us to the finishing line. Mo.
Thank you very much. It's been really interesting. I I really wanted to be a host that listens and learns, and I think we've learned a lot today. I just want to make a few comments, a few points before we close. One, Nigeria has an important role. I always say that Nigeria is the pilot of the African plane. If Nigeria doesn't fly us, the rest of us will be stuck on the ground. So it's really, really important Nigeria gets it right. This is why you see ambassadors, you see the international community, you see all of us working day and night to make sure that Nigeria takes its leadership role and flies the African plane. So we are really delighted to have participated in this. The second point I wanted to make is on post-COVID response, and you've heard it from Ambassador Ketil in this. Multilateralism is the only way out of this. We've seen how the international community got together to support Nigeria when it needed us most. Specifically, we've seen how medical equipment were brought into Nigeria at a very fast pace to be able to support Nigeria and the governors at the state level. So multilateralism and partnership, and you've had that message coming, and we will be with you moving forward. The Northeast, I always say this to the governors when I visit the Northeast, it reminds me of my own home. It's an amazing place with amazing potential. We will continue to support the Northeast, and you've heard from the partners here, the ambassadors and from Aliko Dangote Foundation, that they will continue to support. So that is really good. From a UNDP side, our work on stabilization, our work on early recovery, our work on long-term development in the Northeast, under the leadership of the governors, will continue. We will continue also to have such dialogues to discuss key important issues moving forward in the country as we recover much stronger from the COVID pandemic. I personally want to thank His Excellency Amadou Umaru Fintieri, the Governor of Borno State, for his leadership and his support, and have been available and taking 2 hours of his time to be here with us. Professor Babagana, Executive Governor of Borno State, I have learned so much from you, and I continue to learn from you, and I like the passion you bring to your work, and we will continue to work very closely with you. Alhaji, Deputy Governor Alhaji Idi Abai Gubana, I really like your story. I've learned so much from you today too, especially your story as how education has moved you from where you were to where you are today. So again, thank you very much. I personally want to thank our ambassadors who are here, my friends and people who have been amazing in supporting the UN work and supporting multilateralism and supporting the Northeast. High Commissioner Katrina Lang, Ambassador Ketil, Carlson, and Zoe, I have not met you yet. I look forward to seeing you soon. I've seen you online several times, and you have been an amazing leader in all this, and we look forward working closely with you. Finally, I want to thank my team who've really put this together. Too many to mention, but the team mainly in the Northeast and the communication team. I want to thank Mark, our secret Nigerian who we hide, and then he comes out of nowhere and supports this kind of dialogues. I also want to thank finally Godia Simon, who's our sign translator and interpreter. You've seen her online. We really want to do more of this to make sure every Nigerian is represented and participate in this important dialogue. Okay. With that, I wish you a wonderful week and talk to you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mo. And I think you've said it all. I think wonderful. I do a lot of these events, and I must say that was one of the most spirited, rich that I've done this year. So thank you to everyone. All that remains is for me to say
Mark,
that
we haven't. Sorry to interrupt, Mark. I forgot to thank our participants, all those who are online. I see hundreds of people online. Thank you very much, and very much for the questions.
I was just about to thank them and say that actually I've been reading through the Q&As, and there's not just questions, but there's also comments. So I'm going to recommend to the UNDP team to collate all these questions and comments and send them to the participants so that they can digest some of this stuff, because there hasn't been time to go through it. But I think it would be useful to not just the governors, but also to our wonderful special interveners as well. So I'm going to ask for that to be done. Without much ado, thank you so much for 2 hours of your time. We can't thank you enough from UNDP Nigeria. That concludes the end of this dialogue. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ambassador Carolina. Then thank you, Katil. Thank you, Yusufu. Then thank you, Mark, for this very important, and Yahya.
Thank you.
My colleagues also.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yahya, I'm in the town. I want to see you.
I'll call you. I'll call you after this, Governor.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Good to see you all. Thank you very much. Bye.
See you in Lagos, Vera.
Yes, I'm right here.
Yeah, I'm there soon.
All right. Call me when you get here. Bye.
Bye.